What's up, guys? So today we're going to be talking about another Muslim misconception. So today is going to be about the NOI, the Nation of Islam. So a lot of us in the younger generation don't really know what that is, but the older generation know what I'm talking about, especially the boomers, because the NOI was very prevalent in the civil rights movement, leading up to the civil rights movement and post-civil rights movement, with figures such as Louis Alcindor, who later became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, who famously was part of the nation, and even Malcolm X, who was betrayed by, who leads the nation, gets betrayed by them and is killed actually by the nation at the behest of the FBI. But so I want everyone to understand that even though it has the name Islam in the title, they're not Muslims. All right. So the nation was created by a guy named Ford in the 1930s, who was later on succeeded by Elijah Muhammad. He claimed that he was Jesus, incarnation. He came down to teach Elijah Muhammad a new version of Islam for the black Muslim. All right. So one of the main criteria non-Muslims don't understand to be a Muslim is you cannot contradict the Quran. The minute you contradict the Quran or teach anything against the Quran, the book itself automatically has a criteria that says you're not Muslim. All right. So the book so there's no like leeway or interpretation. It literally says if you say anything that contradicts Islam or the teaching of Islam or the fundamentals, it has to be fundamentals, you're not a Muslim. So these are the fundamentals that the nation contradicts. Second, one of the main fundamental principles or pillars of Islam is that you have to believe the Prophet Muhammad was the last messenger. All right. So that automatically disqualifies the nation and any other subsects in the United States or across the world who make the claim that Elijah Muhammad was a prophet for the black Muslims in the United States. All right. That's the first one. Second one. We believe that Jesus comes back at the day of judgment, just like mainstream Christianity. So to say that Jesus came to you directly and gave you new revelation is another disqualifier. All right, it goes against another fundamental pillar of the day of judgment in Islam. Third, the nation in Islam operated on a very predatory system. All right, they were very violent and they have a very racial ideology. So they genuinely believe white people were created to harm black people, and white people are genuinely evil in nature. Islam is very vehement against racism. All right, it specifically says in our religion, in our doctrine, that the only thing that separates a person from another person is their level of piety. All right, it doesn't matter what race, what skin color, what language. And even the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ on his last lecture specifically said that no Arab man is superior to a black man, and no black man is superior to an Arab man. And when he appointed Bilal to say the Adhan for years upon years, all right, at that time it was very controversial, because how can this black slave do the call to prayer, one of the most important traditions and religious rites in Islam? But he broke the mold. All right. And this is what I mean. When you have a pro-black ideology that demeans other races, you're automatically any sort of subsect of Islam that deems its race superior to another, or its ethnicity or its language, automatically disqualified. So those are the three to four main things that disqualify the nation as being Muslim. Now, let's now do a deep dive on the history of the nation itself. All right. So the nation, as I said earlier, was created in the 1930s by some random dude. All right. Now, there's a lot of evidence that can lead one to believe, because of the close collaboration with Elijah Muhammad and the FBI in the 1950s, 1960s, that this was an FBI operation or a CIA operation, one or the other. Or at least it was fueled by the FBI and CIA when it did sprout out. Like, for example, the FBI, there are some links that they met up with the nation after Malcolm X was speaking out against them, and was leading a more unified version of preaching unity, being better with one another after his post-Mecca trip. And the nation was given the go-ahead by the FBI to like kill him, and literally there was no consequences at all for Elijah Muhammad or the nation as a whole. Second, the nation was very violent, fundamentally, very, very violent. A lot of controversies leading up. There's a famous controversy with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that got swept under the bridge as well. A lot of issues with the nation, but the way they were able to get away with it legally leads me to believe it was an FBI or CIA operation. Okay, now let's talk about the nation itself. All right, all of the fundamental, most famous individuals to have joined the nation all left the nation and publicly denounced the nation eventually. All right, so the first to break the mold was Malcolm X. Malcolm X was killed because he left the nation, spoke out against the nation. Once he understood that Elijah Muhammad was preaching a false version of the Quran. For example, like even fundamental things like Ramadan for us is set worldwide for all Muslims. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's the same time every year based on the lunar calendar. They have it in Christmas. Or they don't pray the 5 daily prayers like we do, and they don't fast like we do. So like basic things that make a Muslim, they don't do, and they have this adherence to Elijah that's not no other Muslim in the world. So that's why when the people from the nation first started doing Hajj, and these people in the Arab world interacted with them, they're like, what the hell is going on in America to lead this? The people were genuinely confused. You can search up testimonies and stuff like that. But Malcolm X, in his memoir specifically, talks about how when he went to Mecca and Medina and he did his pilgrimages, people did not know what the fuck he was talking about. All right, it was so foreign to them, and it was so clearly anti-Muslim. And so after much education, after much reading, Malcolm X made the cognitive decision, all right, through his bravery, through his outspokenness, because Malcolm X always stood for the truth, all right. And for people who don't know, Malcolm X is considered probably the greatest American Muslim to exist, like in general. Usually, it's him and Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Elijah Muhammad's son, Muhammad. I think his name is Walidia, or I don't know how to say his first name, but he himself is an American hero in the Muslim sphere. But he ends up leaving, and he becomes very outspoken against the nation itself, which leads to his death after a lecture at MSU in the early 1960s. All right, and they tell him they're gonna kill him before he does this lecture, and he speaks about the nation. They tell him, all right, these thugs, they send their hitman. And they tell him, if you go up and do this lecture, we're gonna kill you. This man still did it, and he ends up getting shot immediately after leaving. May God rest his soul, yarhamah. But that is true heroism. That is a true Muslim right there. Let us go to Malcolm X. Not Malcolm X. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali also, after Elijah Muhammad leaves, he ends up publicly denouncing the nation, and he ends up actually becoming I think he becomes Sufi, and then he becomes mainstream Sunni. Another person. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, after the death of Malcolm X, also very publicly splits. He had a couple of major instances in the newspaper where they publicly split from the nation in Elijah, where you had Elijah actually harassing him for years upon years until his death. That's another person. And now we're going to be talking about the greatest influential person in America for Muslims, in my opinion, and that is Elijah Muhammad's son. So his name is also Muhammad, by the way. But Muhammad, what happened is 3 years prior to his father's death, he actually spoke out very publicly against his father. And he ends up getting, because he went to study in Saudi, and it actually, his father sent him to study, and it backfired on his father, because this guy actually saw what his dad is saying is complete bullshit, complete lies, complete cult-like propaganda. And he ends up speaking out against his father. He ends up getting publicly excommunicated. So his father kicks him out. He wanders for a couple years, and so Muhammad ends up coming with a phenomenal plan. He starts to realign himself with his father, all right, and before his father's death, he's able to not only come back to his father's inner circle, he's also able to be named his father's successor. All right, now why is this important? All right, so this is important because we come to a very, very important event in the Nation of Islam's history, and that is on the funeral of Elijah Muhammad. Hope this dude's burning in hell, by the way. But on his funeral, his son, who was actually his eldest son, Muhammad, who was excommunicated and ends up now in his name his successor and back in his inner circle after 3 years of laying low and sucking up to his father. What does this guy do? Now, he had multiple options. He could have become the next Elijah Muhammad, an entire congregation willing to do whatever you want of brainwash people. All right, Elijah Muhammad was very famous, by the way, for sleeping with much of his younger congregation or doing whatever he wanted. One of the reasons why Malcolm X actually would speak out against him, because he was sleeping with a lot of the girls, disillusioned women in his congregation. But what Muhammad does, Elijah Muhammad's son, what he does actually is probably the most significant event in Muslim history, in America specifically. And he actually publicly denounces his father. And not just publicly denounces, he eviscerates his father, talking about his father was a false prophet, how none of the things his father preached is actually in Islam. His father was basically a wolves in sheep's clothing. All these things on his father's funeral, televised to all of the nation's branches in the United States. And this was a big event on the news as well. And from then on, we see a shattering of the nation. The vast majority of people in the nation actually end up following Muhammad, who for 3 years been laying the groundwork. He's been bro, this guy was James Bond. He was meeting with people. He got the majority, a good half of the inner circle to agree with him, and so he became mainstream Sunni Muslim. And the nation was in the dust, and it wasn't until that clown Louis Farrakhan resurrects it basically from the dead. And to this day, this dude refuses to die. All right, but he is the next basically psyop. And there's a reason why the nation doesn't die. I genuinely believe the nation is an FBI or CIA or some form of government operation to destroy not only the Muslim population in the United States and devastate it. It's to separate black Muslims from other Muslims across the world. All right, so that way they're not able to find any semblance of brotherhood or partnership with these people or people around them. People don't know. I think it's estimated 30 to 40% of all black slaves transported here to the United States during the height of the transatlantic slave market were Muslim. There's a reason why a lot of black people, they name their sons like Muslim names. They don't know it's Muslim names. It's just normal to them. It's just regular black culture, but they are Muslim name in nature. For example, like Tariq. Tariq is Tariq. You find a lot of black brothers named Tariq, but they themselves don't know it's actually a Muslim name based off of a famous Islamic general. There's a lot of these examples. So I want the average American, I know this video is very long, all right? And I understand it's 12 minutes, but this is a complete breakdown about the Nation of Islam and how the Nation of Islam itself is a controlled psyop. Just like there's many controlled psyops in the United States, specifically against the black population, which ramped up post-civil rights movement in the 80s and the 90s. With Reagan and Clinton when they flood the hood with drugs and all that type of stuff. But this was the first major break, in my opinion, of when people came out of the facade. So I hope to anyone who is part of the nation who watches this video to go do some research about your own religion, all right? And understand that I understand you've been brainwashed. Well, go and read the Quran, all right? Your entire religion is supposedly based on the Quran. Read the Quran. It vividly goes against your entire fundamental belief system. Second, to the average American, all right, go read up about these things. This is one of the most fundamental chapters of the civil rights movement, all right? And also to educate yourself about your fellow Muslims, all right? I mean, Muslims have literally been here since the beginning of the foundation of the United States. Thomas Jefferson had a Quran. He's the oldest Quran in North America that to this day is in Washington, D.C. preserved. All right. Many of the footnotes and the memoirs of founding fathers who attribute like the foundations of America, they attribute it to people like John Locke, but also to people like Ibn Sina. John Locke himself, who is the founding father of liberalism, or modern liberalism, what we consider, he credits people like Ibn Sina, Ghazali, these people for his works, for these ideas. He credits a lot of Muslims, and he credits the Quran for these ideas of freedom of religion, freedom of thought, all these things. These things are all Islamic based in nature because we had these. We had these in the 700s, 800s, 900s. We had these things originally there. It might not have been enforced, all right? We had many issues of tyrants and bloodthirsty people and all this stuff. But fundamentally, the religion preaches this type of stuff. So, again, I apologize for this long video, but this is a complete breakdown of the NOI.